We met when we were just kids. From playground games to teenage late-night talks, our friendship grew like a second family. He was always the one I turned to, the one I trusted the most. We went through school together, shared dreams, and even made plans to start something big, something that would change our lives forever. It was the kind of bond that felt unbreakable, forged over years of loyalty and countless shared memories. We had talked about building a future where we'd be successful together, where our friendship would be the foundation of everything we'd achieve. There was never a moment when I doubted his intentions. We laughed, fought, and supported each other in ways only real friends could. Our families knew each other, and everyone believed we were destined to go far, side by side. After college, we started a small business project together. I handled most of the creative and technical work while he managed clients and presentations. It was a perfect partnership, or so I thought. The long nights, the sacrifices, the constant pressure. I put everything I had into making our venture succeed. He was always there beside me, or so it seemed, telling me how proud he was, how grateful he felt for our teamwork. I believed every word. I believed that what we were building was ours, something we both had an equal share in. But things started to feel off. Small signs at first. Missed meetings, vague excuses, an odd reaction when I mentioned certain ideas. Then came the recognition. A major client reached out with praise for a concept I had designed entirely on my own, but the thanks were addressed only to him. I was confused. He brushed it off as a mistake, claimed he'd correct it, that he had no idea how it happened. I trusted him again, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, this was my best friend. We had history. We had built something meaningful. But the doubt lingered, creeping in every time another compliment was misdirected. Every time I noticed he was handling more meetings without me, updating clients behind my back, altering presentations to remove my name. Still, I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt, thinking that maybe I was just too sensitive, that I didn't understand the way business worked yet. The real betrayal hit me when I accidentally opened a forwarded email thread. It was full of client praise meant for my work, but he had claimed it all as his own. He'd been presenting my designs, my strategies, my concepts as his solo achievements. He even described me in some emails as just an assistant helping with minor tasks. My heart sank. It wasn't just about credit, it was about identity. Everything I had poured my energy into, the late nights I spent perfecting code, the meetings I missed with family just to meet deadlines, all of it had been quietly stolen. And it wasn't just one or two instances. This had been happening for months. I confronted him, hoping for an apology, a misunderstanding, a moment of truth where our friendship could survive. But instead, he gaslighted me, telling me I was being overly emotional, that he had done what he had to do for the greater good of the company. He talked like a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. There was no guilt in his eyes, no sign of the friend I had trusted with everything. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake or a miscommunication. This was calculated. He had used our friendship as a shield, counting on my loyalty to cover his tracks while he took full advantage of my effort and creativity. From that moment, I knew things would never be the same again. Something in me shifted. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. He hadn't just taken credit for my work, he had taken my belief in trust, loyalty, and partnership and destroyed it. The friendship that once defined so much of my life now felt like a lie. Every memory we shared was clouded by the knowledge that while I was building something for both of us, he was quietly building something only for himself. After the confrontation, I realized I couldn't let emotions control my next steps. He had already taken so much from me, my work, my recognition, my trust. Reacting impulsively would only give him more power. So instead of lashing out, I decided to stay quiet and observe. I began to look at everything more carefully: emails, client messages, internal documents, presentation files. Slowly the picture became clearer. He had been carefully crafting a narrative where he was the mastermind and I was just background noise. And because I hadn't questioned it sooner, he had gotten bold. He started excluding me from meetings I had originally scheduled. He would take my concepts, change a few words, and present them as his. The company website suddenly highlighted only his accomplishments, with vague mentions of team support. That team support was me, and I was starting to fade from the picture entirely. I knew I had to be smart about this. Confrontation didn't work. Emotions didn't work. He had built his power not just through lies, but through appearances. He had managed to convince people he was the core of our success. If I wanted to undo that, I couldn't just accuse him, I had to prove it beyond doubt. I started saving everything. Every email I had sent with original ideas, every design file with my metadata, every draft and outline. I even began recording our conversations when possible, especially when discussing project updates. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. I had seen how far he was willing to go. I had no reason to believe he would stop. And if I ever wanted to take back what he stole, I needed undeniable proof. Meanwhile, I began working in silence, perfecting my own skills, quietly building an independent network. I reconnected with a few old clients, reached out to some contacts he had overlooked, and slowly started offering freelance help on the side. It wasn't about money, it was about rediscovering my value. I had allowed someone else to define my worth for too long. Now I was taking control back. But I kept everything under wraps. He had no idea what I was doing. As far as he knew, I was still just helping while he led the show. That illusion worked to my advantage. The more he believed I was passive, the more careless he became. He stopped double-checking his lies. He got comfortable, too confident, thinking he had completely erased me from the spotlight. It was during this phase that I started collecting testimonies. Some clients had assumed we were both involved in the projects. Others were surprised when I shared evidence of my contributions. A few were even angry, realizing they had been misled. Quietly, without confrontation, I built a case, a timeline of contributions, proof of deceit, and undeniable evidence that he had built his reputation on my back. But I never acted prematurely. Timing was everything. I didn't just want to expose him, I wanted to do it in a way that left no room for denial, no opportunity for him to twist the story. I wanted everyone to see the truth without me having to say a word. Throughout this process, I stayed calm on the surface. I kept up appearances, played along, and continued to let him believe he was winning. That was the hardest part, swallowing my pride, suppressing the urge to scream the truth, watching him stand on stages and give interviews while I stood in the shadows. But I reminded myself that this wasn't weakness. This was strategy. Revenge doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes the most powerful moves are made in silence, in preparation, in patience. And every day while he built his false kingdom, I was building the truth brick by brick. People around us noticed little things. Subtle changes. My growing confidence. His increasingly vague answers when clients asked for technical explanations. I made sure that every interaction I had from that point forward was polished, professional, and clear. I wanted people to start questioning the narrative on their own. I didn't have to accuse him. His own cracks were beginning to show. The foundation of his success was starting to shift because the truth was now quietly circulating, and all I had to do was wait for the right moment to bring it all into the light. The moment finally came when all the pieces I had quietly gathered were ready to be revealed. It wasn't a dramatic outburst or a heated confrontation. It was a carefully executed exposure. I compiled every bit of evidence into a structured document. Screenshots of emails, timestamped files showing I was the original creator, recorded conversations where he admitted to rephrasing my work, and testimonials from clients who confirmed my role. I even included side-by-side comparisons of my original designs and the versions he had presented with only slight changes. Every detail was accounted for, every piece of proof stacked with precision. I didn't just want to show what he had done, I wanted to make it impossible for anyone to defend him. The opportunity came during a company-wide quarterly meeting. Everyone was present. Employees, board members, and even key clients. He walked into the room like usual, confident and unaware. He opened with one of his usual self-congratulatory speeches about recent successes and future plans. That's when I requested time to speak. It was unexpected, and he looked surprised but didn't object, probably thinking I was going to support him like always. But I calmly connected my laptop to the projector, and one by one the truth began to unfold. I didn't accuse. I simply showed. I walked the audience through a timeline, how each major success the company had seen originated from my desk, my mind, my efforts. I played audio clips where he downplayed my role, read excerpts from client emails praising him for work I had done, and showed designs with metadata that left no room for doubt. The room fell silent. Eyes shifted from me to him and then back again. The more I revealed, the more his expression changed, from confusion to disbelief, then to panic. He tried to interrupt, but I kept going, my voice steady, my tone calm. This wasn't revenge driven by rage. This was justice carried out with clarity. When I finished, I didn't ask for validation or applause. I simply closed the presentation and said nothing more. The room stayed quiet for a moment longer, and then the questions started. Not directed at me but at him. People wanted explanations. They wanted to understand how this had been going on unnoticed. Board members were furious. Clients looked betrayed. Some employees had suspected something, but no one had imagined it ran this deep. And now that the truth was out in the open, it was undeniable. He stammered, made weak excuses, tried to shift blame, but it was useless. The evidence was too overwhelming, too clear. His downfall had already begun. By the end of the day, he had been suspended from leadership, pending a formal investigation. But in truth, his reputation was already destroyed. The man who once stood confidently in the spotlight had been stripped bare in front of everyone who once admired him. I watched as everything he had built on lies crumbled. Clients began withdrawing their contracts, not wanting to be associated with someone so dishonest. Internal departments demanded audits. His professional network began to collapse, and even former allies started to distance themselves. No one wanted to stand beside someone whose success was exposed as stolen. What hit hardest for him wasn't just the professional loss, it was the silence that followed. People who once praised him didn't speak his name anymore. His calls went unanswered, his emails ignored. His social media pages went from celebration to complete inactivity. The attention he thrived on turned to shame. Meanwhile, I was approached by several clients offering direct work. People expressed admiration not just for the quality of my work, but for the way I had handled the situation. Quietly, respectfully, but with unwavering clarity. I didn't need to yell to make noise. The truth had done all the speaking for me. Eventually, he resigned in an attempt to control the narrative, but no one cared anymore. He became irrelevant almost overnight. The same people who once supported him now spoke of him in past tense. His name no longer carried weight in the industry. His influence had evaporated. I had taken back everything he had stolen, my recognition, my credibility, my place. And in doing so, I had taken away the one thing he valued above all else, the illusion of success. He had nothing left but memories of a spotlight that no longer existed. Once the dust had settled and his reputation was in ruins, I didn't stop to celebrate. I had no interest in parading my victory. My focus was on building, on turning everything I had endured into something greater. With the truth out and his lies exposed, I had been offered a choice: step away and start fresh somewhere else, or step up and take over the very position he had once used to overshadow me. I chose the latter. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine, I was proving that I could lead with integrity, something he never understood. The board had seen the truth. Clients had seen the truth. There was no hesitation when they offered me the leadership role. Not because of pity, not because of drama, but because I had earned it through work, patience, and unshakable consistency. Taking over wasn't easy. There were remnants of his decisions everywhere. Unfinished projects, mismanaged accounts, clients who still needed reassurance. I spent hours rebuilding trust, not just in the company but in the values it was supposed to represent. I spoke directly to clients, answered every question with transparency, and took full responsibility for the company's direction. There was no ego, no need to brag about what had happened. My focus was entirely on moving forward. Slowly, the company began to reflect my vision, my energy, my work ethic. People noticed the difference. The atmosphere changed. Creativity returned, collaboration grew stronger, and performance improved across the board. It wasn't just a recovery, it was a transformation. He, on the other hand, disappeared from the industry. He tried starting smaller ventures under different names, but the shadow of what he had done followed him. The business world may forgive mistakes, but it rarely forgets deception. No one wanted to invest in someone who had built success on betrayal. And worse for him, he had no one left to manipulate. Without someone else's work to claim, he had nothing to offer. The charm that once fooled people no longer worked. He wasn't feared. He wasn't admired. He was forgotten. I didn't waste time thinking about his downfall. I had already lived through the damage he caused. My mission now was to make sure that my story would never be repeated, not by someone else, not in my team, not under my watch. I implemented systems that rewarded real contribution, gave credit where it was due, and allowed for collaboration without fear of theft or manipulation. The culture became one of honesty and excellence. I pushed forward with purpose, not out of revenge anymore but out of principle. What had once been a place of lies became a space of genuine growth, and I made sure it stayed that way. Ironically, the very position he once used to silence me became my platform to uplift others. I started mentoring new talent the way I had once hoped to be recognized. I taught them not just about the work but about self-worth, about vigilance, about knowing the difference between a partner and a parasite. I turned my pain into policy. My betrayal became the foundation of an environment where no one else had to suffer the same way. I had risen not just in title but in value. Not because I played dirty, but because I didn't. Years later, when someone mentioned his name in a casual conversation, it took me a moment to even remember who they were talking about. That's when it truly hit me. I had not only replaced him, I had erased the need for him. I had taken everything he once used against me and turned it into something better, stronger, lasting. He had tried to build an empire on lies, but I built something real. Something no one could take from me. Not because I shouted louder or fought dirtier, but because I stayed standing when everything tried to break me. The people who once saw me as a silent partner now looked to me as a leader. The ones who doubted my strength learned never to underestimate quiet resolve. I didn't need revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't need to destroy him directly. I simply needed to outlast him, outwork him, and outgrow everything he tried to keep from me. And that's exactly what I did.